We finally reached our last Earth Talk of the night. To bring us home, please welcome to the stage Senior Business and Enterprise Management Major, Eric Rosenblum.
Hello, hello. I would like to begin with a question. It has been a question that has freaked me the hell out my entire life. It's been a question that's led me to some amazing and also some really difficult places. It can be sometimes a little comically cliche, but it's been at the core of my own life thus far, and it is definitely at the core of this Earth Talk, so I gotta ask it. The question is, who am I? Seriously though, how the hell am I, as this pile of entirely inanimate subatomic particles, which are said to be no different from those of a rock, or the chairs you're sitting on, or the sabrosa bowls they're making out there, able to look down at my hands, feel into my breath, and wonder what is going on? It's a disorienting and overwhelming question, but an undoubtedly enlightening one too. If you're anything like me, it stirs a few butterflies in your belly and sends a little shock down your spine. And when I first started exploring it, I never could have expected that it would have kicked off something called an Earth Talk. I saw self and nature as entirely separate, but the more I've pulled this thread, the more that I've seen that gap close. And I've stumbled upon a perspective of unity with the natural world that just might inform and inspire a way of living our best lives in harmony with our true selves and with the natural world. And it all started in high school. These illustrations are done by one of my really good friends named Liam, by the way. It all started in high school when this question of who am I got really loud, and the answers in my own head were a little too few or sometimes a little too negative. And as a way to get to know the true self within and to recognize and be more familiar with the mental patterns that were pulling me away from it, I decided to give the practice of meditation a shot. And as I did, sure enough, I cultivated a conscious awareness of the thoughts that allowed me to see through them. And this nice, peaceful sense of self began to arise. So I kept it up. And a couple years after that, when COVID came around, I started spending a lot of time outdoors, as most of us did. I was biking to my favorite pond, driving to rocky shores, or just walking through the woods. And quite curiously, I noticed that when I spent time in these outdoor areas, I would feel this same peaceful sense of self arise. And at the time, it remained a total mystery to me. That is until my friend gifted me a book by the renowned philosopher named Alan Watts, who is from the 1950s. He did most of his work, and he was credited with bringing a lot of the wisdom and especially mindfulness of the Eastern religions and philosophies over to the West. And in this book, he explores the innate connection between humanity and nature. And in doing so, he asks a beautiful and bit of a poetic question. He says, do you feel more like a bird of foreign origin that has flown from afar and landed on this branch, on this tree that we call life, or the earth, or whatever you call this existence? Or do you feel like a flower that has grown from the tree, inherently a part of it all? This question rang in my head, and I finally understood why I felt the same sense of self start to arise when I was exploring nature and also why I was meditating. Because at the end of the day, they were both forms of self-exploration. And it simply made sense. We see trees, flowers, elephants, and sea turtles as expressions of the natural world, part of this living, flowing, fluxing cohesion of Mother Nature, but we draw this arbitrary and alienating line when it comes to ourselves. Why? Of course, we've built worlds of fluorescent lights and air conditioning, but is that any different than a beaver using the materials around it to build a dam? I'm not sure it is. In reality, although we live in gargantuan cityscapes, and a few of us put on virtual reality headsets every day, and those aren't exactly helping us acknowledge our innate oneness with nature, and they may further aid in our confusion, it's truly our inner perceptions and our running minds that are obscuring our true selves and separating us from nature. If we look at a wave, it's easy to think of it as a separate entity from the ocean if we place our attention on the whitewash. But of course, it's always been and always will be one with the sea. So I'd love to share how releasing some of these mental barriers of separation and dissonance can allow us to understand more about ourselves and the world and align more accurately and authentically to be happier selves and to work for a happier planet. First, let's talk pollution. If we see ourselves as separate from the world, it's pretty easy to pollute it. We see the world as this sort of pizza where we can poison a couple slices over here and just eat from the other side. But that's not nature's nature. It isn't this siloed collection of functions, but one cohesive flow of which we're as much a part as anything else. It's more like a soup. If you poison one side of the soup, you're bound to get poisoned if you eat the other side. We're all part of this one thing. And noticing this oneness with nature, it's no wonder that when we dump microplastics into the ocean, they end up back in our bodies after we eat sushi for dinner. If we think of the world as other than, then we'll treat it as such, but incorrectly and dangerously so. When we see the environment as part of us, when we see our connection to it, then we see that the more we harm it, the more we're harming ourselves. And this same sort of perceived separation, yet powerful connection in actuality, occurs between our brains and our bodies too. Especially as college students, we live our days walking from class to class with tension in our shoulders and sitting for hours on end, drinking 3 Celsius and then wondering why we feel stressed and restless. When we see the connection between our brains and our bodies and nature, it allows us to think more holistically. And when we see our bodies and nature as just different aspects of the same self, it's no wonder why when we connect the two, we feel better. When we walk around barefoot, our immune systems are boosted and inflammation is reduced. Direct contact with soil increases serotonin and improves mood. Getting sun early in the day sets our circadian rhythms, and spending time outside simply makes us happier. In all, it's a view of separation that leads to neglect, pollution, and disease, and an awareness of our interconnectedness that allows us to see that the more we care for and connect with nature, the more we care for and connect with ourselves. And the first thing to do to care for and connect with nature is to start by listening, to take a break from imposing our desires on this world around us, and to start seeing, appreciating, and working with what actually is. Yelling at a little tomato sprout is not going to make it grow any faster, and you might actually pull it out of the ground in an effort to make it do something that it can't. In this way, dissonance between our demands on the world and the way it actually works can be quite damaging. Yet, an awareness of and in alignment with the ways of nature can lead to success. Let's take an architect, for example. If an architect is building a home and they entirely neglect the natural patterns of sunlight, rainfall, and the surrounding landscape, then the incoming tenant is going to be paying bigger bills to emit more emissions, destroy more of the landscape around, and waste more water. But sustainable architecture, on the other hand, works with the environment to preserve money and resources through passive heating and cooling, rainwater capture, and habitat regeneration. It's this approach of receptivity, humility, and alignment with the ways of nature that allow for a happier and healthier world, and in turn, a happier and healthier humanity. So whether you're connecting with nature or your body or your deeper self, it's this connection that just might catalyze a relationship with the world that leaves everybody and everything better off. So tonight, I invite you to take one moment to connect with something natural and to ask yourself that fateful question of, who am I? Because it just might be a step on behalf of and towards our very nature. And it just might be a step worth taking, whether barefoot or not. Thank you.